Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at whoknewpodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at whoknewpodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today's episode is episode 4 of season 6, The Doctor's Wife. Trapped in a bubble universe when searching for another Time Lord, can the Doctor save the TARDIS before she dies? This episode is written by Neil Gaiman, directed by Richard Clark. It originally aired on the 14th of May 2011 and was watched by 6.9 million viewers. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
Oh, hey everyone, this is Kelsey in West Los Angeles. Right?
You don't know where you're... Well, look out the window.
Where do you live?
I mean, LA, the West Side.
That's good.
This is Josh.
This is Brian.
This is Frank.
Hi, this is Auburn.
And this is Heather.
Coming to you from parts unknown. From the desert to the sea to all of Southern California, this is Who Knew Podcast.
And Stratford, Connecticut.
Yeah, with the current situation of things with the coronavirus, we are trying something new out, and we are all remotely coming together to record a podcast. So we're using various forms of technology. Amy and Rory are still debating whether to tell the Doctor about his death when they are interrupted by a knock on the TARDIS door in deep space. The Doctor opens it, and a light cube comes rushing in. It is a Time Lord emergency message holding the thoughts of a Time Lord in trouble. This one belongs to an old friend of the Doctor's named the Corsair. Excited to find another Time Lord alive, the Doctor uses the cube to transport the TARDIS to the Corsair's location, an asteroid in a bubble universe attached to our own. Once the TARDIS lands, the Matrix, the soul, the power of the TARDIS is quickly drained away. On the asteroid, uncle, auntie, and nephew take a woman named Idris to a device and drain her mind and soul from her body, making it ready for a new one belonging to the TARDIS.
Have we ever seen these cubes, communication cubes, before? Are they in previous lore?
Not like this, but they were something like that in the second Doctor's last serial, The War Games. And the author, the writer of this episode, Neil Gaiman, remembered that from when he watched it as a kid and wanted to bring it back.
Also, very cool that this episode is written by Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I love his work in graphic novels and comic books, so when this came up in like the promos and things, I was very excited to see it.
Makes sense that he would want to write an episode of this show.
Yeah.
Has he done more before this or after in the Doctor Who universe?
We don't talk about the other one.
Oh.
Stephen Moffat goes, I think Neil Gaiman's a Doctor Who fan. He writes things that are in that genre. Why has he never written an episode? And then so that's why he got him on this season.
That's cool.
Wait, what was the other episode?
The
Night Silver
Cybermen
something.
and
The Silver Nightmare, Nightmare in Silver.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
It's in the next season.
Okay.
I did like this opening. I think it had a lot of good information in it. And it had the two openings because you first see Uncle and Auntie and Idris, and then it cuts right to the TARDIS. You have a lot of information going on in the opening.
Yeah, a little hard to keep up.
I will say, rewatching this episode, I didn't want to watch this at all. I remember not liking it in the slightest. But now that I understand more about the universe, I liked it a lot. But it made me realize I didn't understand barely anything that was happening when I originally saw this episode. Whether I just wasn't familiar enough with the lore and what they were talking about, or they were talking so fast that because I wasn't as familiar, maybe I was more of a casual fan back then. But as I was watching this, I was really getting into it, and I remember thinking, like, I don't know what's going on, and I really don't care. So I think that'll gives you a hint as what my final vote will be on this episode. But I did really like it now that I could follow it.
I agree. I remember being very confused the first time I watched this episode, but I don't think there was ever a time I didn't like it. I think I enjoyed the experience of kind of unraveling what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
More than it sounds like you did, Josh.
But I guess this might have been during a time where I binged a lot of the show and it just kind of washed over me more than it kind of seeped into me. But at the same time, I don't want to sit here and talk about what I thought of it the first time I watched it. I watched it just recently, and yes, I agree. It's very intriguing what's going on, and it was a very long cold open. It kind of had two cold opens. In fact, I was waiting to get up for the credits to do something, and I was like, "Did I miss the credits?" So I like that it was mysterious, but we still got, a bit of them in the TARDIS. And I like those things that they do when there's a knock. There's a knock at the door. How can that be? And they kind of play with the reality of the situations that are there, space and a spaceship and time machine, and then put the mundane things in, like knocking at the door.
I like that the knock is first forceful, and then it's a nice little friendly knock. Dun, 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 dun.
Right.
I did like the taking the haircut knock, but I think if this was done during the Davis era, it would have been 4 knocks, knock 4 times
right,
to
exactly.
add that feel to it.
I did when he was talking about those other Time Lords, he does mention about something about that Time Lord and himself or herself a couple times. So he kind of throws out there that the gender bending regenerations this early.
Yeah, Eugene, was this the first time?
They did mention it was like kind of more throwaway in the End of Time, but Neil Gaiman said he wanted to bring this into the current mythology, that Time Lords change their gender, because it's something he always thought of when he was a kid watching the show.
Really? I know they started planting the seeds not super early on, but fairly early on.
Yeah. Knowing Neil Gaiman's, I guess, body of work from graphic novels and comic books, watching this again was just a treat. It felt like a comic book come to life, because Gaiman does a lot of things especially with the Sandman line that he did, where he takes ordinary things but then expands on them and gives I think I remember one episode or one issue where he gives the seasons personalities, and to me that's kind of what he's doing here. He's giving something that isn't more or less sentient the way we see sentience in a humanoid form, giving that thing a human voice.
Which is so cool.
I know.
It's like what we always dreamed of.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know we're getting a little bit ahead talking about exactly what happened with the TARDIS in this woman's body, but it reminded me a lot of your first car, or everyone had their favorite car that they felt a very emotional attachment to. And what if you're sitting there talking to your car, if you hit a bad pothole, you apologize to it and things like that. I also got a kick out of it was when he gets the little box, he says, "I've got mail," which is in reference to "You Got Mail," which is extremely dated at this point. Well,
everything he does is dated.
It was dated then, yeah, but it was still in the zeitgeist enough to kind of be funny. People watching this.
I love the joy on his face.
Josh, you mentioning the first time you watched it, you weren't as into it, and I have to agree. I think part of it was knowing that Neil Gaiman had wrote it, so it set it at a higher level of expectation. And then the entire time, I'm expecting somebody to call out the doctor's wife, or there be a wedding because of the title of the episode. And we don't really get it that on the nose throughout the episode, spoilers. So I think that was like an initial disappointment after first watching it. Like, where was the doctor's wife, even though she's there the whole time?
Right.
The only thing I dislike about this episode is its title.
Yeah.
The title, The Doctor's Wife, wasn't given to this episode until kind of later into production. The original, there's 2 other previous titles, were Bigger on the Inside or The House of Nothing.
I was thinking when I was watching it again this morning, I wanted the name of the TARDIS.
Idris.
Well, no, the TARDIS would call itself.
Oh, like during the episode, it would come up with a name.
Yeah, and then put that name as the title.
Oh.
Or maybe they could change it to the Doctor's work wife, you know?
I think bigger on the inside has some multiple meaning.
Ew.
Heart. I thought her F.
No, that was such a good line.
Whatever. The Doctor's wife worked for fangirls like me because I was like, oh, I want to watch this episode. Ah.
No, I
No, it
I
was
have no
awesome.
problem with the title. It's fine for me.
Well, that we did bring up Uncle. Sorry. I like the number of creepy old guys we're getting this season. We had the caretaker at the orphanage with the children, and now we're getting Uncle. I don't know why, but we're just getting a lot of these fun, creepy older guys that are just fun to watch because they're so out of character for many of the other people that we've seen on Doctor Who.
Love a creepy old man. Keep him coming.
I don't know. You kind of catch this if you're watching with subtitles because it goes by so fast. When the Doctor is trying to get enough energy out of the TARDIS to go where the Corsair is, he needs more energy. He needs more power, so he starts deleting rooms.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, he's deleting rooms, and he's like, goodbye bedrooms, goodbye this, goodbye that, and then he says, goodbye pool. It's like, oh, don't get rid of the pool. The pool is cool.
Well, no one ever
Only
knew.
They did with the
Pool.
Fourth Doctor. The Fourth Doctor had the pool, and it was very indoor hotel Hearst Castle-y. Searching the asteroid, they discovered it has plenty of rift energy, which should allow the TARDIS to refuel itself. Idris frantically runs up to the Doctor, yelling, "Thief!" followed closely by Uncle, Auntie, and the Ood called Nephew. He kisses the Doctor, babbles on about he is going to steal her, and the difficulties of word tenses before she bites him. Also the difficulty of that sentence. She tells the Doctor that the little boxes will make him angry. She turns to Rory and says the definition of petrichor is the smell of dust after the rain. Rory didn't ask, but Idris responds that he will. The Doctor goes to Nephew the Ood and fixes his communication device. Nephew begins playing a distress message picked up from another Time Lord somewhere on the asteroid. Auntie introduces them to the asteroid, who is named House.
This part where Idris is kind of talking nonsense, you only understand what she's saying after you've seen this episode, because the first thing she says to the Doctor is bye, and I like just keep that in mind because that'll play into the end. But the matte painting of the junkyard
Is great.
looked amazing. I love that. I wish we would have held on it a little longer or gone to it in another scene. And it reminds,
They go back to one.
yeah, but I want like a longer time to kind of soak it up, because
Yeah.
it reminds me of Trotter's Lane, which is the first Doctor, in that it's a junkyard, but now it's a junkyard in space. And again, that'll play in later.
With the big crash ship, it reminds me of Alien.
I don't know. You don't see matte paintings like that, and where you used to see them in sci-fi all the time, you don't see them as much.
I
really-
didn't know it was there.
Yeah, that's how good it is. It's so good that you don't know it's there.
I really liked all of the effects in this episode. I thought the outside stuff later, or the in-space stuff, all of the outside VFX of traveling through space were just really cool. I loved the wobble of everything as it went.
Yeah.
They just really hit all the marks on the VFX for this episode.
I agree with you there.
Yeah, nothing really stood out as even at the end when the big climax was happening with what was going on. As fictional as that looked, it didn't look fake.
Agreed.
Going back to the hypercube. Normally, when we see the Ouroboros, or however you say that, it's the snake eating itself from the tail. It's always, to me, a negative thing. Like when Millennium, when that series was on, that was the logo of that show, and it was kind of a dark thing as far as the main character having, I guess, premonitions. And so to see it on a Time Lord kind of switch that connotation of the negativity. So I kind of like that.
I didn't get that. I got that it's a continually circling, like a rebirth, what a Time Lord would
Yeah,
do, representing life.
and that's what I'm
I
getting
didn't
at.
see it as a negative. Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that normally when it's used outside of Doctor Who, it's usually bad. So I like that they made it a good thing in this case.
Is the Corsair a Gallifreyan that we've seen in the classic series?
No, Neil Gaiman made up this Time Lord.
Okay.
And the manicness and craziness of Idris, uncle and auntie, I don't know, it works for me in this case because I like the explanations that as to why they're like that.
Well, it's also very Willy Wonka like you get take and Rocky Horror Picture Show where you get swept into this place, this room or this building, this house, and everyone's acting really weird but friendly, and it's off-putting, and you're being welcomed in, but it's not right.
Yeah.
That's something that's very alluring and creepy at the same time.
I did like that you said biting is like kissing, but there's a winner. When they first landed on the planet, they're going outside, and Amy asks, where are they? What's going on? And the doctor says some ideas, and she goes, "Well, you just can't say you don't know." She kind of puts that in her breath.
Yeah,
And I think that's
she's talking about the hypercube message. This Time Lord is in distress or something, and he keeps coming up with these words, and then that's when she says that line.
And if we go back to the first Doctor, Barbara says something like that to him, but she says a little more angry. She doesn't accept it. It's like, "Oh, you always act like you already know, but you don't." And she's upset. And here Amy's like, "Yeah, you're just lost like the rest of us, but you just can't admit it."
And even later, she tells Rory the same thing as in as many words, right? Like they just call them Time Lords.
Right.
They don't actually know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cute too. When they're all telling each other to look out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Amy's telling Rory to watch the doctor. The doctor's telling Rory to watch Amy. They're cute.
Standing on the house made me think of the beast below, where there's an entity underneath that's driving everything. This is the evil version of that.
Yeah, but we don't know that yet, although it's pretty obvious.
It also makes me think of Empire Strikes Back
Yeah.
with the ground
Which
being
part?
bouncy.
Because,
The asteroid.
What?
The asteroid.
oh.
This is in a cave.
This is
Okay, Eugene, hopefully you know the answer to this. Do you know why Idris has a name and isn't daughter or niece?
Yes. So what happens on House, the asteroid planetoid junkyard, is that House takes in all these other beings, and without giving too much away, Auntie and Uncle have been there for a while. That's why they look a little more disheveled. And then Idris is a newer person that has been sucked into House. So that's why she hasn't spent enough time with auntie, uncle, and nephew to build that familial relationship with them. So that's why they still call her by her name.
Is that something you read, or are you just ascertaining?
That's something from Neil Gaiman.
Ah, very good.
Well, if Neil said it.
You know my buddy Neil.
And even the name Idris is very similar to TARDIS, like
Yeah.
the sound, the word, the letters.
Yes.
Oh my god, I never got that.
Oh, me neither. I thought it was maybe originally supposed to be cast by Idris Elba,
Would have been a very different
the
episode.
Doctor's husband.
Now I love that name. Oh, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I always thought that. No.
Never did. You made this perfect episode even more perfect.
Aw.
Wow.
I like back to where the TARDIS was discovering biting instead of kissing. Again, the uncle, I don't know the guy that plays him, but just his deliveries, like, I'm uncle, everybody's uncle. Like, props to that actor.
Even the way when he in the cold open, when he was saying something nice to her, but then switched it to, "No, it's gonna. I wish it was me in your place. No, I don't, because it's gonna be very painful."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just a great character.
Yeah, he couldn't even do the sentiment. Oh, I wish it were me instead. No, I can't even fake it.
By the way, I looked up where I recognized the was it Elizabeth Barrington? What was her name?
The auntie.
Yes, she had a part in the British Office Christmas special that was heavily featured. She wasn't one of the stars of that special, but they would go back to her a lot, and I've watched that special many times.
So since we're bringing up Elizabeth Barrington, she has also been in another Neil Gaiman production or Neil Gaiman authored show. She played Dagon, Lord of the Flies in Good Omens.
Yeah.
She's one of the fallen angels. She has all the flies buzzing around her.
Right.
She is very prolific in British television. There's the other thing I looked her up real quick, and the most recent thing she's been in that I've seen was Yesterday, the one about the Beatles.
Yeah, I saw that in her. Who was she in that though? I just saw that movie and I can't picture where
She was credited as Hazel, but I don't remember. Maybe Hazel was one of the.
I'm colorblind. I can't see Hazel.
But I think she might have been one of the talent agency people.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
I really like Idris's energy. I feel like she's actually out crazy the 11th Doctor. And it's like he's getting a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah.
Her, she also reminded me of like Helen Bonham Carter would have been good in this role. Maybe a little too obvious choice, but I do enjoy the character of Idris, and I agree, Heather.
I liked how she was also talking in different times.
Yes.
Like her things that she was saying weren't linear a lot of the time.
She couldn't get her tenses correct.
There you go.
Right. Well, to me, that was just because she's a time machine, so she was talking about things that haven't happened.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, again, that's why I like the manic and craziness that we're introduced to her, because it makes sense once you've watched the episode. It's consistent.
Yeah.
She does it so well.
Yeah.
But man, you definitely have to watch it a couple times to hear all of everything she's saying.
Yeah. I rewound it a couple times. But again, like that's why I think the first time I watched it, I just didn't catch it.
All that cosmic power in it.
Watching this now in 2020, her timey-wimey stuff going on in her head reminds me a lot of Janet from The Good Place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
where it's a character that's so much bigger than being a person. Like, especially later when we get more of her dialogue about archiving things in the TARDIS, and things will happen, and so they've already happened for her. They are happening for her.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. They lock up Idris and take the Doctor, Amy, and Rory to the conversion device, where House welcomes them using Auntie and Uncle as a conduit. For their safety, the Doctor tricks Amy and Rory back to the TARDIS and locks them in. He then searches the asteroid and finds numerous old Time Lord distress cubes. As Idris predicted, he is angry. He then notices that Uncle and Auntie have body parts from several other beings, and Auntie's arm is actually the arm of the Corsair. The Doctor goes to Idris and asks how she knew the boxes would make him angry, and discovers that she is the TARDIS. He frees Idris and they banter until the Doctor realizes that House feeds off the Artron energy of a TARDIS, and Amy and Rory are trapped inside.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot to happen.
Yeah, I agree. But it's a lot of good stuff.
I love that moment that we need to have it in there, but I love that it's there where he's sending them back to the TARDIS, and Amy is, trying to figure out what he's feeling, and she finally just says, oh, you found another Time Lord, you want to be forgiven, and this is the way Mark Smith plays it, where he's like, wouldn't we all? And it's like,
yeah, don't we all is the line.
Yeah, it's just so well done. It doesn't even need to. Well, I guess it does need to be in this episode because it is about Time Lord.
But in that quick exchange of two lines, it brings us up to speed with like 4 seasons.
And where he is in his, in his development. I think it's very pertinent for this episode.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't realize how pertinent at this point in the episode because you don't know what's happening later, but the whole thing with the eradication, is that the right word? The eradication of the Time Lords.
Extermination.
I also like that it's countered by some comedy because the Doctor is saying, go fetch my sonic screwdriver. I left it in my jacket. And then Rory's like, that one? No, I have another jacket. You have 2 of those?
He's probably got a whole wardrobe full of them.
Yeah.
I think it was also around then my favorite line of the episode where Amy says something. I think she may have said to him, you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know something, or do you know what you're doing? And he says, no, but if it fits, but if it helps, yes.
Yeah.
I do think Amy has grown a lot since it started and has become very smart. When she knows he just did this to trick us, after the fact, and she can read the Doctor about him wanting forgiveness. And I think that's how much she has changed from the 11th hour.
Yeah, she's definitely like a worthy companion now. Everything I didn't like about her before is kind of gone. She doesn't argue with him as much petulantly. She's more of a peer.
Yeah,
I will add that it's not as if those parts of her were just written out.
No, she's developed.
Yeah, it's definitely a character arc.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was expressed.
Yeah. Well, I've been saying for a while, I really didn't like Amy for a long time, but now that I know her whole arc, I really enjoy her story. I enjoy her being like a petulant child when she's younger, earlier on, and her emotional growth between the Doctor and Rory and herself and everything she's going through. And you need, in order for someone to grow, they have to start somewhere. So looking back on the whole of it, I really like her, but that was only in hindsight.
Yeah, I agree with you too.
Yeah, and then this is when we're talking now where she's starting to really hook into everything that we're saying.
This thing of getting the companions to safety is something, again, that Neil Gaiman loved or tried to emulate from him watching classic Doctor Who episodes. And I think he does it well in this case. Instead of the Doctor just being angry that I'm used to seeing in a classic Who, he finds a way to get it done in a funny way. I don't know, it was nice to have, like what we mentioned, Rory, look after the Doctor, and then the Doctor says, Rory, look after Amy, and then they both find their way into the TARDIS and they both get locked.
Yeah. And even at the end when he's talking with the house and stalling, he's doing it comically.
This episode really could have been written either way, as super gut-wrenching or more subtext.
Mm-hmm.
I really think ever since The Lodger, they started to lean into Matt Smith's comic chops.
Oh, there's a moment coming up. It's so good. But this is, again, what I like about Neil Gaiman is that he's able to kind of come into something and add to it, but also respect what came before.
Yeah.
Because the one that's coming to my mind is he did, I think it's a Sandman issue where it deals with, I think it's the Elemental Girl. There's the woman version of Metamorpho, and he does a kind of a short story on her, but he does it in a way that still acknowledges superhero canon, but still fits within the Sandman title. So I like that he can do both, and he balances them well. And that's why I feel he's doing in this scene when he tells Amy and Rory to get to safety.
I agree.
Moving on to Idris, when she's kind of discovering her human body, she says, "Are people like this? Bigger on the inside?"
Best.
I really love that.
That's the best. I remember the first time watching it, and when she says that, it's like, oh my God, that's like the whole show.
Yeah.
In one line. And by show, I mean Doctor Who, It's like, oh yeah, everybody freaks out about the TARDIS is bigger inside, but every single person is bigger inside. And they just never said it before then.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
I wonder if Neil Gaiman was watching like 900 seasons of this show going, nobody say that, nobody say that.
Well, originally this was supposed to be in season 5, Matt Smith's first season.
Yeah.
But Gaiman wrote it without having Matt Smith casted yet. So when he wrote the first draft, he had David Tennant in his head.
Is that why we see a little nod to the 10th Doctor later on?
Yes.
I was just going to say that if the episode was probably written less comically and more emo if the original draft.
Yeah.
This would not have played as well, I think, in season 5. Like, it was really good choice to put it here, I think.
Yeah, because it was only Amy, so having Amy and Rory really helped having the cast separated.
Yeah.
I like when uncle and auntie are dying because they just accept their fate. It's kind of like, we're dying, that's just how it is. The house will figure out what to do, and then they just like keel over. And in a way, it's to me, it just made me think of like our mortality. We all know we're going to die, but it's something that we sort of fear when it comes down to it. And I like that in their deaths, they just accept it.
Hey, Uncle felt good.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you're saying, Josh. Like, these are creepy, bad things that they're saying, but then they're packaged and delivered in an inviting sort of way. And I like that juxtaposition.
Right. Yeah, so like the horribleness of death is treated very mundanely and almost like as if it was nothing. And
then that goes into the Doctor scanning Idris because she's also dying. And then she goes, "Yes, of course I'm dying. I don't belong in a flesh body. I'll blow this casing in no time." I love that. That's what the TARDIS would say.
I do think it's really sad to think about and never really addressed afterwards that the real Idris was was obliterated at the very beginning of the episode.
Absolutely.
I like the continuity that they had because the Doctor was able to psychically find the Time Lords. It's similar to when the 10th Doctor was trying to find the Master and tracking him, and then they use it later on in the 13th Doctor in the community with the Master, that you can feel the other Time Lords.
It's a presence he hasn't felt since...
Since what? What? Wait, what was he gonna say?
And the box that held all the cubes.
Oh, yes.
Tesseract.
Look, no, it's the TARDIS.
It's a TARDIS cupboard.
The TARDIS cupboard.
Oh, the way it looked. With
Yeah.
the oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think of that.
Oh, man. Okay, so talking about that scene, you can see the anger in Matt Smith's eyes.
Yeah.
But it's also restrained when he goes to talk to Uncle and Auntie. I really enjoyed that acting choice.
Yeah, it was really well done. It's very different from The Beast Below when he shows that kind of anger as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it in Beast Below. I thought it was very undoctor-like. But in this one, I think it's really, really, really done well.
No, I totally love that moment.
Well, I think it's nice because there's a foe that is actually dangerous. You know, like a lot of the enemies that the Doctor goes up against, we think, how could they possibly defeat the Doctor? But here is, a cabinet full of dead Gallifreyans, Time Lords. So, yeah, I mean, that's some real stakes. Like, the Doctor could be defeated by this house.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with you there.
The best line is, "You gave me hope, then took it away."
Oh, that one right in the heart.
Yeah, and that makes someone very dangerous. Doesn't he say something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, continuing with good lines, I think he talks about how House has killed, so many Time Lords, but the Doctor has killed all of them.
Yeah.
Like, that was really powerful. And back a little bit, I really liked when the Doctor goes to save Idris, and he says that he stole her, but she says that she stole him.
Right.
And I love how that dynamic continues throughout the episode.
Did you also notice the jail cell she's in is hexagonal and not vertical? So it's mirroring a TARDIS interior.
That's interesting. Well, it might have been built out of other TARDISes.
Exactly. That's why.
Oh, there was something very familiar to me about House, and I just realized it seems to probably be inspired by Hal from 2001. The way he spoke, the calm, Anglo voice but that resonated, talking about dangerous and horrible things, but in a very calm manner.
And one little humorous note before we move on. When the Doctor releases Idris from the cage, there's a musical cue there, and to me, it sounded like the Thenardier's song from Les Mis. Did anyone else hear it?
Oh my God, Auntie and Uncle Thenardier.
Yeah.
It does fit with the wardrobe of the family, if you will.
No, they totally remind me of
Oh my God.
But yeah,
Master of the House.
when the Doctor unlocks the cage, he goes, "Well, this is time to unlock me." Listen to it there, and you can kind of hear the Thenardier.
Huh.
That's Auntie and Uncle.
So right then it all switched in my mind.
Oh, I'm learning so much about this episode.
And about my mind.
House surrounds the TARDIS with a green energy field and hijacks the TARDIS. Uncle and Auntie tell the Doctor that they are dying now that House has left, and they die. Doctor and Idris build a makeshift TARDIS from the remains of old half-eaten TARDISes in order to get off the asteroid. Idris feeds the console some of her energy to get it working. Meanwhile, House decides to keep Amy and Rory alive so that he can play with them, or is the correct word torture. House makes them run through the TARDIS and separates them. Amy finds Rory, but he is hours older. They are separated again, and now it's been decades for Rory, but only minutes for Amy. An angry and erratic Rory attacks Amy, but she gets away. She runs into the decaying remains of Rory and collapses. But just at that moment, present day, and much alive, Rory runs around the corner and says that House is just messing with their heads.
So there's a lot that happens here, and before we dissect it, I'm going to try to go in order. When the Doctor and Idris are freed, they have a little exchange, and I love what happens there. The Doctor says, since we're talking with mouths, not really an opportunity that comes along very often, I just want to say, no, you have never been very reliable. And she goes, and you have? And he responds with, you didn't always take me to where I wanted to go. No, but I always took you where you needed to go. You did. I like how they had an argument about what's going on, and then it just reverses by that simple line of, no, I took you where you needed to go.
Yeah.
Is that the first time that was mentioned? Because I know we talk about that a lot.
That's it. That's the line we're always talking about. Pretty sure.
I think
Is it?
Yeah, this is the moment.
And then in that same sort of scene where the Doctor figures out that the house is trapped Amy and Rory, he runs out to the TARDIS to try to get them out of harm's way. And did you notice that he tries to snap?
Yes.
I love that. And he tries everything. And the snap was just a nice little touch. And then he says, when the TARDIS disappears, I really don't know what to do. That's a new feeling.
Yeah.
And he's like kind of inspired, invigorated by not knowing what not to do.
Pleasantly surprised.
And then Idris says, how long do these bodies last? And then the Doctor goes, sorry, do you have a name? And then she responds with, 700 years, finally he asked me. So what do I call you? What do you call me? Sexy. And then Matt Smith's look, he looks away. It's like that quick look in The Lodger that Josh mentioned when James Corden goes, oh! It's kind of like that in this episode. And he goes, only when we're alone. We are alone. Oh, come on then, sexy. It's just, these lines of banter between the two of them are just amazing.
This was the point where I thought the episode should have been titled The Name of the TARDIS.
Oh, that's your name. The Name of the TARDIS is the title.
The name, yeah.
That's what you meant. Okay.
No, the name. It's like The Name of the Doctor. This one would have been The Name of the TARDIS.
You mentioned green stuff surrounds the TARDIS. What's that green stuff?
It's
Is
house.
that the
It's
Archon
House's
energy?
presence.
Oh, that's House. Oh, that's right. Because when House is inside the TARDIS, it's all green. But before that, the Doctor locks them in. But the first time watching this, it was very confusing that was the Doctor locking them in and not House locking them in. But I think it was just me when the camera goes through the keyhole and you see the TARDIS door get locked once and then double locked. It's like double deadlocked. He double deadlocked them in. There, the Doctor did lock them in.
I don't know if it was meant to be confusing on purpose, so you weren't sure who was doing what, but the fact that the energy coming from House eating the TARDIS or getting inside the TARDIS did look like regeneration energy. Mm-hmm. I found that to be a poor choice, very confusing.
Oh wait, it's green. You can't see green, right?
Well, it depends on the green, but I can.
Oh,
that's probably why you thought that.
Like regeneration energy to me.
Oh, what color is the? It's a different color.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. And what's the other?
Yellowish or goldish.
All right. If you say so.
Yeah, golden.
In your world.
Well, that's good. I never would have thought of that.
Never would have thought of it. Yeah.
But that happens a lot, actually, with design and color, where people who see color just fine delineate differences solely in color and not in tone. Like if you were to look at watch, because they don't exist anymore, but I used to watch a lot of television on little black and white television in my room, and then I would see movies in color and be like, oh, that's what color that is, of course, but not even knowing the difference. Like someone's suit would look the same exact tone of someone else's suit, but one was blue and one was red. And design-wise, they don't really think of that. It's kind of a bad design tonally. So, a better way of thinking would to have done a little bit more to differentiate even just the look of the one energy from the other.
When Rory and Amy get trapped and they have to convince House to keep them alive, Rory comes up with like, well, if you kill us now, it won't be any fun. And, that's why you kept Auntie and Uncle around for amusement. Earlier in the episode, Auntie and Uncle explained to the Doctor, and maybe Rory and Amy as well, that the house helps them. And that's why they're always like becoming these...
patchwork.
What's
patchwork
the Doctor called? Yeah, patchwork people, because the house is helping them. And when Rory had this line in the TARDIS of like, you keep them around for amusement, it made me think differently, that the house isn't helping them. He's making them patchwork people just because it's fun.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but also I think he needed them to stick around to do physical bidding that he couldn't do. And he's using all the parts of the other Time Lords and, because they are so sturdy.
To enhance them?
Yeah.
To make them
because they're probably eons old as well. And if they I did notice that Uncle had like an alien ear. It wasn't a Time Lord ear, but I'm sure that ear was replaced many more times than, say, the other Time Lords. But they have to have somebody there to greet the new Time Lords that come in, and or whatever, any other captives and stuff like that.
They need a butler.
They're also like pawns in this game that he's playing. They're not people.
Also, Rory's just pulling that out.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of...
It's like he's desperate. And he just says that not because of anything he's learned about House.
And that's what gives House the idea to play with Amy's mind. Although,
yeah,
I didn't take that as playing with their mind, as he was manipulating the elements inside the TARDIS like the TARDIS can do.
Almost like test driving a new car. He's like, oh, what can this machine really do?
I did find it interesting he was only doing it to Amy and not Rory, though.
Well, he killed Rory. Again.
To mess with Amy.
That's what I mean, but he wasn't doing anything to mess with Rory.
I imagine that Rory's hallucinations were happening and we just didn't get to see them.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Well, also the fact that Rory had to apparently live years in these seconds, I'm sure that was torture enough.
That was fake.
I thought that was like replicate.
Or it's that we see both Amy and Rory's torture, but we only see Amy's point of view and we see what happened to Rory. It could. Right. I like that it could be either way.
Right. And it's also it's reminiscent of her story and their story together and stuff like that. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't go with Rory has to live alone and wait until he dies. I can't. He's already done that. Please don't make him go through that again.
Well, that's why it's torture. The one that really got me with Amy and Rory is where the light goes off for Amy but not for Rory. Right. I thought that was really well done, editing and staging of that.
Yeah, and that too. I mean, if I'm going to be a nerd about it, if he's just manipulating the environment, how can you manipulate the environment for one person and not another?
Whoa. This is magic.
That's what leads me to believe that it was psychic torture.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't really Rory being old.
Right. Well, then that's... Well, yeah, but he can manipulate the elements to... If the TARDIS can make a swimming pool, the TARDIS can make a fake Rory. But if they're in the same place, then if that's just manipulating the environment. So I don't get. I guess it's House. House has this ability to manipulate people's minds. Then why would he need a lot of other things? I don't know. I think if you start digging at it too much, there's some holes. But yeah.
Don't ask those questions.
What does God need with a starship?
Or how about this? When they're separated, they're actually being tortured, if you will, separately.
Yeah.
But they only think that they're there.
Yeah, but there's that moment when they are together and the lights go off for her, but not him.
I didn't think it was really Rory.
But
okay.
That's what I was going to say. Okay. That might not have been Rory at that point.
Very good.
Either way, it is fun to see more of the interior of the TARDIS. Like, we have corridors that they're running down and coming to a door that's closing on them. Like, we haven't seen that a lot.
And they're very classic Who looking, and I like that.
Yeah, they are. But the thing for me is, Rory, you need to run faster.
Or
hold
hands. Yep.
Yeah, come on.
I think what they did with the TARDIS, fit and looked good for what they were looking for, but I didn't like that look. To me, I wanted the other TARDIS designs to go through there, because that was too much of a spaceship to me, which had some of the original series had, but I just thought after seeing some of the other insides of the TARDIS, I wanted a different look than that.
We needed more highly uncomfortable furniture.
I mean, I don't think they had the budget, because the reason Nephew is an Ood is because of budgetary reasons. Neil Gaiman originally wrote some sort of new alien, and Moffat was like, can you pick one from we've already done?
Oh, interesting, because I forgot to get excited that the Ood was in this.
More Oods. Never stop ooding.
No, I liked it when I saw the Ood, but it didn't seem like an Ood.
No, it was pointless.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
And I think that's why I like the Ood, because the sphere and his eyes, I believe, are green. So It's like House taking over another person, and this is just the most recent or a convenient one he had. And it just, to me, kind of cements the world that there are still Ood out there.
Right. And I guess Amy and Rory, this is their first time they're encountering an Ood.
And also, Neil Gaiman said that he wanted to bring the Ood back to how they were originally introduced in The Impossible Planet. You didn't know if they were good or bad, because how we come to think of the Ood now is that they're harmless, they're good. But then the way Nephew is behaving is not. So I like that it's switched the other way around, where when we first saw them, they looked creepy and disgusting, and they had red eyes. And then now we know that they were just being used by something. And now with House being in control of Nephew, it takes the what do you call it, the arc the other way, and I don't know, I just think that's nice.
Knowing what the Ood are, and now it's being used, and just was more depressing and sad that it's lost its life to this.
Yeah, because the Doctor can never save the Ood.
That's a great line. Another Ood I failed to save. Especially when you think Matt Smith never worked with Ood before.
Right.
This is the Doctor, it's not the actor. It's kind of like David Tennant referencing, what did he reference? Oh, Are You My Mommy?
Well, that and Sarah Jane.
Yeah.
There was one discussion between Idris and the Doctor, which I really liked, fixing an incontinuity with the TARDIS doors.
Is it?
You know, where she says the doors of the TARDIS are supposed to open out, and the Doctor wants them to open in. So I know in certain episodes they open out, and certain ones they open in throughout the whole classic and modern.
Okay, but here's the thing: it's that the sign on the door says "pull to open," and she's complaining, saying you always push the doors to go into the TARDIS. That wording on that sign, "pull to open," isn't referring to the TARDIS doors. It's referring to the door of the telephone cabinet.
Oh, is it?
Right.
You pull the cabinet door to get to the phone. Yeah, to get to the phone. It's not referring to the TARDIS door. So it's like, I want, for 700 years, you've been pushing. It's like, because I don't open the pull to open door.
But I remember some episodes of the classic, the doors would open out.
Yeah.
You know, and whenever you look from outside the TARDIS, they always open in because of, the actual production.
Yeah.
But I like that.
That's because back then, they had, when they built the set, there was no room in there for the doors to open.
No, the first season the doors opened in. It's just depending on what was being built at what time. Because I remember some others it seemed like they opened out. Okay. No, but also in the classic, the inside of the door is always different than the outside of the door. They changed that in this modern era so that you could see the police box backwards, the sign, so the windows were there. But in the classic, it wasn't. So it always the inside of the door opened one way, and the outside of the door opened a different kind of idea.
Back to Idris and the Doctor. I like how once they create the junkyard TARDIS, she's looking at herself in the mirror, because the TARDIS has never seen this body. So all those gesturings of pushing in your mouth and cheeks and nose, I really thought that was nice.
Oh, you're right, I didn't get that.
Well, it's just the first time she's seen a physical manifestation of herself.
Yeah, first time she's had hands and a face.
So it's not even just this is the body I'm in. It's just this is me. There's been no other instance in its existence where it's seen itself. One other thing about being a being is to see its own reflection. So just that act in and of itself, aside from the fact that this is what I look like, it was I actually look like something.
And then they create the junkyard TARDIS, but they don't have the thing to fuel it, to jumpstart it. And I like her line that he goes, "I don't have it." And she goes, you've always had me. And the way that's done, again, visual effects, they did a great job where they go into her eyes and you see the glow, and then the kiss to the time rotor. It all worked for me.
Yeah.
One question I have about the junkyard or the graveyard is, if House is eating all the TARDISes, how come they're all there? And then I thought, well, he's eating the energy inside them, but the energy was put into somewhere else. So what is he feeding on?
Well, the Matrix is put into the human body, which is explained, but I can't really explain what that all means.
You have to take the red pill or the blue pill.
This is just my explanation. So, let's say it's the smartphone. You remove the iOS from it. You still have the casing of the smartphone, glass, metal, plastic, but it still holds electricity. So House is then feeding off of the electricity left in the iPhone. That's how I took it.
Gotcha.
Okay. Wow.
That
You
helps.
made that so easy to understand. Bravo.
That helps. I also enjoyed that moment when they were looking at the junkyard, and the TARDIS mentions that she's looking at the empty bodies of
Her sisters.
TARDISes, her sisters.
That's a great line. I love it.
And then they had that 2-shot of the Doctor and Idris standing side by side, and the Doctor is still he's moving a lot, having the high energy of the Doctor next to the solid, steady rock of the TARDIS. That was just like a moment for me that helped me understand that, like, while the TARDIS and the Doctor live in the same world, they're very, very different. The TARDIS is a more steady presence.
Well, I think their conversations in general are also saying a similar thing. You weren't reliable. I took you where you needed to go. Like, they sort of have always been a team that complements each other. This is just the first time they've been able to say it. But yeah, they're like a dynamic duo.
Totally, yeah.
When one's freaking out, the other one kind of keeps it together, and vice versa.
It also reminded me at one point, even though this was written before, of the new Star Wars movie Solo, with that one character that was in somewhat their consciousness, or the nav computer was plugged into the Millennium Falcon.
Wasn't it L something? L?
Yeah, I can't quite remember the name of the droid, but
I do remember thinking about this episode when I watched that.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, putting the consciousness into a ship, how is that not going to make me think of the TARDIS?
Right.
I think another conversation that I really liked between Idris and the Doctor, it might have been the same one, when they were arguing, and she says at a point towards the end, you talk and run around and bring home strays. Like, Neil Gaiman is such a good writer, especially with dialogue, that, there's a lot of really great pieces in this. But yeah, that's another one that really defined their characters.
And there's even that's even a reference to, I think, Martha, when she says, what am I, just a stray that you're collecting or something? She mentions strays in her conversation with the Doctor.
Yeah,
I had a hard time taking notes for this episode because I wanted to take a note of everything.
It's possible, because I did. Idris psychically connects with Rory to communicate a message from the Doctor. She transmits a path to another TARDIS console room so they can lower the shields, allowing the Doctor and her to materialize inside the TARDIS. On their way, House makes Amy only see darkness, and she runs into Nephew. Rory finds her, and they go to the other console room. Idris sends him the password sequence to get in. Rory tries saying it, but nothing happens. Amy realizes it is not a verbal password, but a psychic one. You need to think the meaning of the words, one of which is petrichor, the smell of dust after the rain. The shields are lowered as House orders Nephew to kill them. The other TARDIS materializes, crushing Nephew.
Petrichor, a real word?
Yes, it is.
I love that. I never knew there was a name for it.
I like that the password is a psychic one, a mental one.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I like that Rory is the pretty one. And Amy is the orangey girl. The orange girl? The orangey girl?
Yeah, orange. Yeah. It's funny when Idris is talking to Rory, the Doctor comes in, like, she's got that POV shot, and he goes, "Oh, Rory," and blah, blah, blah. And then she's talking, and then she comes in, the pretty one, and then comes back out. That always made me laugh, the timing of that.
Comic timing is really good. It's almost like theater.
Yeah.
It made me think that if the TARDIS had a favorite, it was Rory, and I like that because Rory is my favorite of the couple.
It's not going to be Mickey Smith, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I was thinking that just now as you're reading the summary. I do like how they write Rory. I feel like there's a respect for the character where there wasn't a respect for Mickey and I'm only comparing the two because they're kind of like the boyfriend of the companion.
It was almost like with Mickey, they started to write him better, but they treated him poorly. Because, like you said, like at a certain point, Mickey got really cool. He was the one fixing a lot of the problems, all the stuff, but he was still Mickey. He was still Mickey the idiot. And the thing about Rory is, from day one, Rory's always been right. Everything Rory says is right.
Yeah.
Taking photos on his little camera phone.
Yeah.
I just have one little nitpicky thing. Earlier we mentioned, the doctor sends Rory and Amy into safety in the TARDIS, where he's like, oh, it's in my jacket. Oh, the jacket you're wearing. It made me think that Rory knew what the doctor was doing.
Right. He was calling him on it.
But then later he's surprised, or in the TARDIS, he's actually going to look for this screwdriver. And it was just a small little nitpicky thing where I was like, really? I thought that...
Because the line is, she's talking to, I believe Amy's talking, or she's doing something, and then Rory goes, right, the jacket, and he goes that way.
Right, and I was like, oh, because in my mind, Rory had figured it out, because he is, like Josh said, he's right most of the time, and he is a little bit smarter than your average boyfriend of a
companion.
I don't know.
He's a companion.
But then that could play into him wanting to keep Amy in the TARDIS.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought. I didn't think that while watching. I thought it just now as you two were talking. Like, that must be why.
Yeah.
But when you're told something you want to hear, and he wants to protect Amy. So when you're told something you want to hear, sometimes you don't second guess it. So to me, it didn't bother me.
I think we might have already talked about a lot of it, but this is the part where we get the darkness in the TARDIS, where Rory is leading Amy, but is it Rory? Is it Amy? Like that was confusing, even from a psychic-linked TARDIS changing point of view, because Rory is leading Amy, but then we see a shot of Rory on the ground, and then we hear him, a moment later, and then so it's very, that one was an awkward.
I think it was just purposely, manipulating the audience to be like, oh no, that wasn't him. Oh no, that is him. Oh, he was knocked out. Like, I think it was more serving the audience than serving Amy.
But I did like how dark this episode, but especially this part of it, like they weren't afraid to have people in complete darkness with a little pool of light like somewhere on the screen. But it was a very moody episode, and this section of course even more so.
Well, and even just the darkness of tone, like with what she imagined was happening with Rory, and just that whole horrible experience she had about him growing old and dying and all that stuff. And in his dying moments, he hated her, wanted to kill her, and then he comes in, come on, we gotta go, and she's just like ripped out of it. She has no time to like even deal with what she just went through. Let's go.
And it's also here when the TARDIS is directing Rory to another control room that the doctor says there are no other control rooms, and the TARDIS says she has 30 archived, but I think the doctor says, oh, I've only had 12 desktops. So there's this huge number of possibilities that we still have.
From before he stole her.
From before or in the future. Because they're all the same to her.
Right.
And I'm so glad that they used the previous TARDIS console. That was such a nice thing to see.
Yeah, I loved that.
And like you said, they could have chosen anything or do something new or different, or gone back to one of the first one, which would have been nice. But to see it here, the 9th and 10th, was great.
And that happened because they were expecting to do this one during the 5th season. So it made sense for them to hold the set, to not strike the set. And the actors were saying it was really kind of weird. We had to walk past Tennant's set to get to our TARDIS for a year and a half. If it hadn't been planned for the 5th season, they would have torn it down. But then when it was the 6th, they still kept it around. So we were able to see that because it had originally been planned to be closer to Matt Smith's first times ago.
Wow, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, because when Neil Gaiman was writing this episode, he wanted like a more classic TARDIS console, and Moffat already had like this ace up his sleeve that we have the previous season's console, but he didn't tell him that until later.
Otherwise, we would have seen like a console from like Doctors 1 through 7.
8, yeah, 1 through 8.
8, really? They would have
Like
used the
movie,
like the one behind Frank, yeah.
Probably not.
Well,
Probably was not.
They know where to get it.
And it's still standing.
Is it?
Yeah.
The one from the movie? The American movie?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
This
that's
one.
right. You guys got to see it.
I got to see it, play with it, and go places. When the doctor's introducing Idris to Amy and Rory, I really thought it was poignant that he only introduced her to Amy.
Oh, I didn't catch
Amy,
that.
Rory, this is the TARDIS. No, he was Amy, this is the TARDIS. She's a woman, but she's only went to Amy, and I thought that was really interesting.
And Amy, do you want to say Amy's reply to that?
You go for it.
Amy goes, she's a woman. And the doctor's like, she's a woman. And the TARDIS. Amy goes, did you wish really hard?
It's the perfect response.
That made me laugh so hard. And it still made me laugh this most recent time watching it for this podcast. So I like that line still has the punch.
This part is really cool. Like the TARDIS that they have built is wibbly wobbling while it's chasing them, and I just really like it carried that same feeling of the TARDIS that I've seen throughout the new season. That it doesn't travel in a straight line. It's like zigzagging all over the place. Having the more round golden circle ship going after them, I just thought that looked really neat, and it felt in the universe of Doctor Who, and it all just felt really good.
Yeah. I do agree. I did enjoy that.
It definitely gives it a more otherworldly quality, and I don't know if we've seen it more in like newer seasons, but whenever we see it, how it's always spinning and flying through space makes it feel very different than like a Star Trek world or even Star Wars, where everything is very, how we envision airplanes to be, where they're just like traveling on the same horizon.
Totally.
And I know it's already built, but back to that junkyard, the Be Kind, Rewind Swedish aspect of throwing all of these random pieces that to us look like, a red boundary from a theater seating, and that
velvet rope.
That rope, a velvet rope, thank you. The mirror that's on accordion style arm, like all of those pieces that to us look like junk, but in the Doctor Who universe are, high tech things. Like that's fun.
So do you want to know a little bit about that?
Yeah.
So the Junkyard TARDIS was a Blue Peter design contest, and a kid designed that.
Oh.
This was a contest done in 2009. The winner was 12-year-old Susanna Leah.
Well, I thought whatever we saw on screen fit the world of Doctor Who with some of the other inventions we've seen the Doctor make. So good job.
Much better than the Azorbalov.
They learned their lesson.
Although that's a good name.
House is surprised the Doctor escaped, but is pleased he has more playthings. The Doctor makes a deal that if they are not killed, he will help House leave the bubble universe, and House agrees to the deal. The Doctor tells him how deleting some rooms from the TARDIS will allow enough thrust to pass through the bubble. House decides to dilute the room that they are in, therefore ridding him of all on board, just as the Doctor knew he would. As the 9th and 10th Doctor's console room is deleted, moment of silence, a failsafe in the TARDIS transports all the living beings from the deleted room to the main console room. But they are back in the proper universe, and House still plans to kill them. The Doctor tells him that he made one big mistake. He let the Tardis Matrix back into the console room. Idris stops breathing as the Matrix leaves her body and battles House for the TARDIS. She defeats him and uses Idris's final moments to say hello, or really goodbye. She returns completely home to her TARDIS.
And so that's why I wanted to point out that when Idris first meets the Doctor, she says goodbye. And then when she says goodbye to the Doctor, she says hello. And I like that it's not in linear fashion because she's a time machine.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed that writing from Neil Gaiman.
Great performances in that scene.
Yeah. And speaking of Rory, he's a nurse, so he's always by Idris's side as soon as she starts to show signs of dying. And I love
that.
Her pulse at one point.
Yeah. And this was mentioned before, but House says, "Fear me, I've killed hundreds of Time Lords," and the Doctor replies with, "Fear me, I've killed them all."
It's like, well, if you can't beat them, join them kind of line.
Yeah.
Did anyone else see the parallel between how House took over Uncle and Auntie and talked through them, and the TARDIS took over Idris's body to talk to the Doctor? I thought it was really interesting because it had, the evil aspect of just using them, and the TARDIS was different on the good one, going, "This is what he knows," and animated her before dissolving. It was just felt very similar, but in like the yin-yang kind of feel.
Yeah, that's neat. I didn't notice the parallel, so I'm glad you pointed that out. But I did like how she said she couldn't see anything because it was dark. I did like that because the the body is dead, I guess, and
well, because now she's in the console and she's only using Idris as
a mouthpiece.
That's it. Yep.
And I like that she did say hello, doctor, meaning that was, what you wanted to say. At the beginning, she was very confused and tenses didn't make sense, but this time she understood and knew what to say. She wanted to say hello, after all this time. Well, I thought that was very sweet on that end.
Yeah, I'm Frank, that's where my mind was this entire episode, but I kind of like what Eugene just brought to it, is that it's like it's layered. It is, there is like a plot explanation to her saying goodbye at the beginning and hello at the end, story-wise, but then there's another like layer to that.
I do like that it has the two different meanings and both were going on and both are correct. It's not either or. It's like, no, both are going on. I like that.
And it's also just well acted from Saran and Matt Smith. When she disappears back into the TARDIS console fully, the little, I don't know what you want to call it, but Matt Smith does something with his mouth that looks just amazing. The way it looks very much like he has been crying. I don't know how else to explain it, but he does something where his mouth or his jaw shifts and he looks off to the side. I really enjoyed that moment.
Facial acting.
Is this also where we get the TARDIS explaining the word that she couldn't remember? That was big, but so sad.
Which I was thinking, is it wife? Is that the word?
The word is alive, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's such a great, again, we've been loving on the dialogue and the script, and yeah, that just caps off even more. Just how great the writing is that it, we set up this, not a mystery, but we set up a question earlier, and here the TARDIS is answering the question, like, what is that word? And it's alive. And I think, especially as we record this in 2020, the lines quickly after it, I think this was from the Doctor, but being alive right now, that's all that counts. That's where we're all at. We're all alive. We're all trying to help each other. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
It even reminds me of the Russell T. Davies era, where being an ordinary human being on this planet is one of the most important things. That watching it last night, that's what that line made me think of, alive. And then especially what you're talking about, Alburn, in the current COVID-19 situation. It's just like it's just important to just be alive right now.
Agreed.
Yeah. We don't have to feel bad about not changing the world while we sit on our couches for 2 months, as long as
it takes.
What about not changing our clothes?
Wow, way to ruin it.
Smells like armpits.
Way to bring it back, but did you? But yeah, I can't express enough how much I just enjoyed the farewell of Idris in this moment.
And it makes me wonder, does the TARDIS have the consciousness of the TARDIS back inside its original body have a new element to it?
For us, it does.
Right. But
has something changed about it now that it's had this experience?
I think they hint that it does, because it pulls that lever on its own.
And I see it the other way, is that it changes the Doctor, but not the TARDIS, because the TARDIS still takes him where he needs to go. And now the Doctor just knows that it happened.
I'm just wondering if the TARDIS is sentient. Is it sentient? So did it take this experience it just had, and did it have personal growth as a result?
I think it's up to the viewer.
I like to think it does.
That's good.
Well, just like I had something. How sad that the Doctor gets when he has to say goodbye. And I think for a lot of us, it brought up reminders of like how we've felt in the past when we've had to like sell a car that's gotten too old for us to really drive anymore, or when we've had to move houses or apartments. We are emotionally attached to these inanimate objects. At first, I know that's just something that the goodbye brought up in me, and made it even more sad because I could relate to the Doctor. I could relate to the character having to say goodbye.
I remember when I was moving out of my last apartment, by the time I was packing up and moving, I'm like, I can't wait to get out of here. And then when I literally was walking out, turned around and basically said thank you, like thank you for keeping me safe and during this time. I was totally expecting to be like, see ya, and then I turned around to do that and I couldn't. I actually was just, you know what, I didn't feel like putting that bad energy into that space. It was just thank you for keeping me safe and good luck to the next one.
Rory tells the Doctor and Amy that the last thing Idris said was, "The only water in the forest is the river, and they will need to know this someday." The Doctor works on the TARDIS, and she takes them to their next adventure, wherever that is that they need to go. Neil Gaiman said that this is the second time he's written an episode where he has to put a line in to preclude to something else. The other thing he wrote was for Babylon 5.
So that was a requirement, like you have to put in this line about the river in the forest?
Yeah, and he was like, I guess that's what I do when I write TV now. Also, that line, the only water in the forest is the river, I looked it up and it said on the internet that Idris says it while she is babbling stuff in the prison. But it's a reverse dialogue, the reverse audio. She says something you can't understand, then she says, like a 9-year-old working on a car in his bedroom or something.
A motorbike, and then also do feature fingers?
That's it.
Those two things are things that are going to happen in that episode. Just later on, she says the same line.
So if you're ever curious, you can rewind to that scene and hear for yourself. So what is the Doctor installing, Frank?
Oh, he's adding a firewall around the Matrix so this can't happen again.
Yeah, I caught him saying that.
I like when the Doctor doesn't have his coat and he's got those goggles and the tool belt and he's just working on the TARDIS. It reminds me of things like Back to the Future, like Doc Brown cobbling together the DeLorean. Yeah, and it goes with like what he said, I'm a madman with a box, except I don't have a box. But that's earlier line. But now he's a madman working on the box.
But he pulled his goggles down when he's going to talk to Rory, and it looks like it hit him right in the face, and then they cut away. And it was just, I want to see, that must have been an accident, but they just left enough of it in that you see it.
That was funny.
And then when Rory asked the Doctor, because they go to the room, and he says, the old one was deleted, but you'll get a new room. And then Rory asked... Yeah, bunk beds are cool. And then Rory asks if the Doctor has a room, and Amy just takes him away. But at that point, the track that is playing is The Madman with a Box. And I thought that was great, that fit with what has just transpired in this episode. And then when he puts two cables together and there's a spark, and then you cut to the exterior of the TARDIS, and then there's that wobble in space, I really enjoyed that.
Yes.
You think that's a metaphor? Or
yeah, could be. It is Stephen Moffat writing, or, show running. And then when he talks to himself, like Idris is still around. I mean, she is, but I just enjoyed how when the switch flips to go to wherever, he happily dances around the console. That's it.
It's so cute.
Really enjoyed that moment. It just showed how much the Doctor is connected to his vehicle. The TARDIS is, his car, his inanimate object. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I like the line that Amy had that's pertinent to that, where even after the rest of us are gone, it's just the two of you. Or it's just the two of you even after we're gone, or the rest. I don't know. I can't remember the exact wording, but...
Yeah, him dancing around the TARDIS console was a great button to this whole episode.
I agreed with Josh earlier that when this episode starts, it's not easy to love right away. I think it's just very abrupt and fast-paced, and you're not quite sure what's going on. And then to end with this, ended with a series of emotional roller coaster moments, and then the Doctor dancing around happily. And it's like, this is not where you expect it to be. From the first 5 minutes of this episode, this is not where you expected you would end up emotionally.
Yeah, I agree. For me, this is an episode that I don't think I've ever rewatched until now for the podcast, but it's an episode that has affected my viewing of so many episodes. But as an episode as a whole, it's not really one that I like to rewatch.
It's funny because I have the opposite effect, is that I don't want to rewatch this because I don't want it to lose the impact, so that I don't develop a mental callus for something that I know affects me.
Kind of like how I can never have my favorite song as my ringtone.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel that. I hear that.
Because it's a ringtone.
I would definitely be more inclined to watch this again than I used to, now that I saw it with these new eyes.
I'm glad.
Did the house give you new eyes?
They're 20 years younger.
Well, some of us liked this episode the first time we saw it and thought it was one of the better ones of the season.
It's top 5 of all time for me.
So it's interesting how we all can see it differently, but I really liked it when we first saw it. I thought it brought a lot of uniqueness. It was a standalone, so that's pretty good. Every time I watch it, I just like it more, and so
I love this episode.
Brian, you said earlier that it is so good that you don't want to take notes, and I agree. Sometimes I had to remind myself, hey, I need to talk about this later, so I got to remember what's happening.
I mean,
because it is so good, it just takes you right into the story.
For me, every single line is classic. Every single line is perfect. The acting's perfect. The writing's perfect. It even has a good look. I mean, I couldn't love this episode more from the moment I watched it the first time to watching it this morning. God, I love this episode.
There's a really neat character moment at the end. We talked about it with the bunk beds, but it's not Rory that asks about the bunk beds. Rory whispers to Amy for Amy to ask the doctor to get rid of the bunk beds in the room. And I just thought that, it's just one of those things where for whatever reason, like, it just made me really like Rory and Amy's character even more. Like, why would he feel the need to not ask the doctor for bunk beds, but to get Amy to do it? It's just a great capper to the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
So we mentioned Idris. She is played by Sir Anne Jones, and we've previously seen her in a Doctor Who-ish episode, which is the Sarah Jane Adventures, the episode Mona Lisa's Revenge, and she plays the Mona Lisa.
Oh, wow.
Recently, she's played Anne in HBO's Gentleman Jack, and this is a British show. She's been in a lot of British procedurals. The one that I remember her most from is Scott and Bailey. She plays Rachel Bailey. It's a detective inspector. And then we mentioned Neil Gaiman and how he has used other people. The voice of House is Michael Sheen.
Oh, really?
He's used Michael Sheen in Good Omens opposite David Tennant as Aziraphale. Michael Sheen has also done a lot of stuff. He's the priest in Kingdom of Heaven. He was in 30 Rock, Masters of Sex, Prodigal Son, which is currently airing, and he was Lucian in the Underworld franchise. And since we did an episode with
Twilight, or Underworld?
He was in Twilight and Underworld.
Nobody's perfect.
And since we did an episode with Richard Nixon, Sheen played David Frost in Frost Nixon.
He also plays Tony Blair in every single British show about Tony Blair.
I was working in Los Angeles. I won't say what neighborhood, but I took a walk over lunch just to get out of the office for a bit, and it was a nice neighborhood that I was close to. And yeah, I definitely walked by a bearded Michael Sheen walking his dog, looking at me like, what are you doing in my neighborhood? You don't belong here. So I just kept going.
Did you go, oh my God, it's the house?
Yeah.
Loved you on Doctor Who.
No, I'm very, I try to leave celebrities their privacy.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think they appreciate that. And then we mentioned Elizabeth Barrington, who played Auntie. And then Adrian Sklar plays Uncle. Recently, he was the English master in the movie Tolkien. And then in the live-action Beauty and the Beast, he was Monsignor Dirac. And then Paul Casey plays Nephew, who plays all the aliens in Doctor Who. It's like the Jadoon leader, the Ood, all the monsters you can think of. Mm-hmm. This episode was so good that it won the 2011 Bradbury Award for Outstanding Dramatic Presentation and the 2012 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation Short Form.
As well it should.
I'm kind of thrown by how much I disliked this years ago.
You're wiser now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just really got to be...
I was going to say, your explanation of why totally makes sense, though.
Yeah, it's just really funny to me looking at this now and how good it is, like how it just went right. It didn't go over my head, it just kind of went in one ear and out the other back then.
So Neil Gaiman, like I mentioned, he watched classic Who, and so he found it great that he could write running through corridors in this episode, but then was thrilled when they got a quarry. And that's the junkyard.
Yeah.
Some trivia or continuity is that we mentioned the second Doctor previously sent a message through Hypercube, and that was in the War Games. And then House uses the TARDIS telepathic circuits to deceive Amy and Rory, and this is done similar fashion in The Edge of Destruction with the first Doctor. The Doctor also references using rift energy to refuel the TARDIS, and this was done in Boomtown and Utopia and Torchwood. Extra energy is given to the TARDIS by deleting various rooms inside the TARDIS, and this was done in Logopolis and Castrovalva. This was the transition from the fourth Doctor to the fifth Doctor. And at the end of this episode, The Doctor's Wife, the Doctor mentions going to the Eye of Orion, and that was mentioned in the Five Doctors special. And then the thing of changing the desktop theme was mentioned first in Time Crash with the fifth Doctor. And then when he calls the TARDIS sexy, that was in reference to the 11th hour when he gets a new TARDIS interior. Ian Chesterton was one of the first Doctor's companions. He was the first to observe that the TARDIS is alive, because when he goes to see the TARDIS in the junkyard, he can feel the vibrations from the doors and says it's alive to Barbara, which she also becomes the companion of the first Doctor.
Was that in the pilot?
Yep, The Unearthly Child.
Okay.
The idea has been around since the first episode, but I think Neil, being a fan, and like what I mentioned, he's able to take in all these things from any property he writes on and just add to them. One version or one draft of this script had the Doctor try to use the key to get into the TARDIS when Amy and Rory are trapped with House, but then the keyhole disappears, so he can't put a key in there, and that was removed for budgetary reasons. I thought that would have been cool.
Yeah.
So The Doctor's Wife. Who is this episode good for? Or more specifically, this episode is good for who? A new viewer, casual viewer, a fan of the show, or a diehard?
Look, listening to what the others had said, it's not good for a new viewer because they could get lost. I think to really appreciate the episode, it'd have to be for at least a fan, to know what's going on and understand the essence of the TARDIS, and to really understand the relationship between the Doctor and the TARDIS. So I'm going to put it in fan for the best ones who could watch it. But then you're going to watch it again, and then you seem to like it more, so that's good.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is for a fan, not a diehard, because I wouldn't consider myself a diehard, but I'm definitely more than a casual. I'm a fan. So the best way to enjoy this is to know everything that they're talking about. And then it's really great.
Yeah, I think I agree for the most part with Frank and Josh. I remember not loving this the first time I watched it, and I really wanted to. So definitely I would not use this to introduce somebody to Doctor Who. Between casual and fan, like I really like this episode, but I think because of the issues I had when I first watched it, I will put it in fan. It's a really good episode. If you enjoy Doctor Who, you should watch this episode. But I don't think I would use it to introduce somebody to the world.
I think that this episode is best for a fan. I love how this episode changed how I think and feel about the TARDIS. I love how it affected me. I really love that, but I also am in the boat of not liking this episode the first time, and there is a lot has to do with how much I miss in dialogue and plot, and there's a lot of things that I missed. For preparing for this podcast, I watched it twice, and there's stuff that I missed the first time I watched it that it took me a second viewing to get and understand. So I think that this episode is best for a fan. Like, you're going to enjoy it more if you're watching this on the third, fourth viewing.
I'm going to say casual. It's just damned perfect, and if you are at least familiar with the overall concept of Doctor Who, I think you'll be able to follow along. It's definitely a subtitle episode. You have to put the subtitles on. They talk so fast, but I have a friend now who's entered into the casual territory, and I think this is how I'm going to introduce Matt Smith to her. So casual.
It's interesting that he said that thing about the subtitles. Subtitles could seriously knock this into casual, but since that's not on the table, since that's not a rule, then I'm going to go with fan for basically the same reasons that everyone already said.
I just wanted to point out, too, that Matt Smith and Sir Anne Jones star in this episode, so we get Smith and Jones again. To me, I love this episode. watching it the first time, and it's because I knew about Doctor Who and I know about Neil Gaiman. I'm familiar with those things. So I really wanted to put this into the new Who category, good for a new viewer. I think I have to put it into a casual because you have to know who you're recommending this to. And I have people that like Neil Gaiman that have never seen Doctor Who. They can watch this episode because it is standalone and it's got the stuff that they like. And most Neil Gaiman fans watch Doctor Who. But for the average person on the street, I think this is better served for casual, just because I guess I have an affinity toward putting sentience into inanimate objects like Toy Story, where you imagine what your toys do when you are not around. So to have something like that in a sci-fi show, I really gravitated toward that. And then the acting is great between Matt Smith and Sir Jones. And I like the emotional roller coaster of confused, funny, dark, and then heartwarming. That stuff really grounded it for me the first time, and it hasn't lost that edge on me. So I'm going to put it in casual. So that wraps up The Doctor's Wife. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by Auburn.
You can find him at auburnbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page. Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, enable the AnyPod podcast skill. Ask AnyPod to play the Who Knew podcast.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who,
the longest-running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival, spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
Thanks to Russell, Sydney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
Delia Derbyshire,
and all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.
We will do The Doctor's Wife now.
Oh, will we?
That's what he said.
Sorry.
That's exactly what I said.